Donald Trump's once again at odds with the RNC, and the committee's chairman appears to be losing his patience. The Republican frontrunner thinks the parties rigged the delegate process to keep him from getting the nomination.
The bottom line is the rules are the rules. Didn't you just get outplayed on the ground?
No, I don't think so. I know the rules very well, but I know that it's stacked against me and by the establishment. I fully understand it. We had people out there, and they weren't heard. We had delegates there. We had a lot of delegates, and they were not heard because the Republican Party out there was 100% probably controlled by the RNC, which maybe doesn't like this happening because I'm a self-funder. I'm putting up my own money. They don't like when I put up my own money because it means they don't have any control of me because I'm working for the people.
But the party's leader, Reince Priebus, says that's not the case, and he hit back in a tweet last night saying the nomination process is known for a year plus beyond. It's the responsibility of the campaigns to understand it. Complaints now? Give us all a break. Here's Rush Limbaugh's take on the issue.
What do you mean if Trump is denied? He hasn't won it yet. If he wins it and he's denied, then you've got a point. If he gets to 1237 and they try to take it away from him, then you've got a real point. But he hasn't won diddly squat yet. He hasn't got 1237. He hasn't won. There's nothing to deny yet. And I think that may be a point. There is no entitlement here. Just because you're leading doesn't mean it's yours.
Okay, so obviously a lot of high emotions on both sides, some strong statements coming out, one from the chairman of the RNC, and then you saw Mr. Limbaugh there weighing in on this issue. So now it's our turn. All right, so what do you think, Bowling?
I spent a long 4 or 5 hours today looking into this. I think Donald Trump is wrong on the issue of individual states, individual contests. He's complaining about Louisiana. He really shouldn't complain about Louisiana because no one took anything away from him. It's just Ted Cruz got some things that were there for the taking that he was unable to get. Same thing happened in Colorado. Maybe the same thing is happening in Nebraska as well. So in the respect that he didn't know the rules or the system was rigged against him specifically, I'm going to say I don't agree with that at all. I think the system is kind of rigged for both Ted Cruz and Donald Trump at the convention level. And I spent a long time looking into this today because I want to make sure we lock this down completely. At the convention, just before the convention starts, the Rules Committee is comprised of one man and one woman from every state. There's 100 there, so 50 states, plus one from each of the 6 territories. So there's 112. But then there's a chairman of that Rules Committee that's not one of the delegates. Could be anyone. Likely going to be Reince Priebus or Paul Ryan. Could be, may not be. Point is this. If Donald Trump gets to that convention without 1237, 1236, let's just say, he doesn't get it on the first or second vote, that Rules Committee chairman, who's not a delegate, can say, let's take another look at the rules and then push for another rule, maybe changing the rule to bring in more people by lowering the threshold of that 8-state majority that you need right now, according to Romney. They may change that down to 5 states or 4 states or no states, for that matter. Maybe no one. And then it would open up to more and more people. Now, the pushback is, well, the delegates that are going to the Rules Committee at the convention are Trump and Cruz people. Not necessarily. They may be. They may have flipped. They could be state-level RNC operatives. So there's a lot of questions. I mean, it would be great to get...
What's your bottom line here?
My bottom line is I think that they can clear this up. The RNC can clear it up saying the rules that stand right now will not be changed.
That would be changing the rules.
You can say that the Rules Committee is not going to change.
You can't do that. Look, I don't like the idea that anybody's stealing anything. I think politics is difficult enough without changing the rules at the last minute. And what you're suggesting is they change the rules in a way that would benefit the front runner.
No, the rules are in place from the 2012.
So keep the rules, including the rules, that the Rules Committee gets together, and then they decide what's in the best interest of the Republican National Committee.
You're talking in a circle right now.
Okay.
The rules, keep the rule that deems every rule temporary. That's ridiculous.
Right.
But that in essence is what we have.
Dana Perino, I want to know everything that's in your little highlights right there on your paper.
I did some work because I had some time off, and now I'm back and ready to go. So Don Rumsfeld was famous for saying, well, actually, it's not his saying, but it became famous during the Iraq War when he was questioned all the time about readiness and preparedness, and he said, you go to war with the army that you have and the military that you have, not necessarily the one that you want. And I think that is the same with whichever candidate is running. You run with the election process that exists, not necessarily the one that you want. And now a lot of party people that are like stalwart And these are the ones that they have the little pin, and they have the hats, and they go to the committee meetings, and they've been part of the RNC or the DNC for their whole lives, and they know these delegate process, and they're probably the only ones that actually really pay attention to it, except for every 4 years. Then people come back around and go, oh, wait, now we want to get involved in this process. Now, I understand the frustration because you really have to run 50 or 56 different campaigns all at once.
You do.
Well, and plus maybe even more, because you have the general election strategy for that. You have a primary strategy for those early states, and then, as you've seen with this recent development, so you have the delegate push. The other thing that the Republicans have that the Democrats don't is, so the Democrats have the superdelegate process that we've been talking about. The Republicans changed that a few years ago to this winner-take-all and proportional type thing to try to winnow down the field. That was successful for both campaigns, even though the Democrats only started with 4 Democrats. Now they're down to 2. We had 17. Now we're down to 3. So that process worked. It's just that each state has their right to come up with the process. And nobody, when the rules were done last June, April, whatever, nobody, or I think it was earlier than that, in April, nobody knew who was going to run at that time. I mean, you could have guessed that maybe Jeb Bush will run. It might have been Scott Walker. You could say Rubio, Cruz. But I don't think anyone would have said that they knew Donald Trump was going to run, so that's why they did these rules. So I think Eric's right on that. The key for Donald Trump, I think, right now is then try to win. He just hired Rick Wiley, who was the campaign manager for Scott Walker. Scott Walker's campaign didn't last very long, but Rick Wiley is an experienced hand with very good connections with the RNC. Probably a very good hire for him.
So that was a good move in terms of having a winning...
We'll see. I mean, there's people who are detractors of his that say that might not be the best move, but if you have such a thin staff and you're trying to run 56 different campaigns all at once, then, yeah, I think having Rick Wiley is smart.
Somebody who can aggregate it.
Yes, sir.
Wasn't he just with the Cruz campaign? Didn't he just have to...
No.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the things you learn on the 5. Okay, Greg, what do you have to offer to this complicated situation?
It's very hard to follow up after these 2 people because they both pretty much explained everything. I mean, I can't think of anything.
We'll try and confuse people then.
All right, so I'm going. Okay, I think what Cruz did, and by the way, as you know, of the 17 candidates, I think Cruz for me was was my least favorite, which makes it really hard for me to compliment him on the fact that he was, he had great strategy and he worked his butt off, which is what Trump didn't do. What Cruz did was he exposed a complacency that Trump had that was based on, I think, the free media. I think that he was like a junkie who relied on the media as a central advantage. They were his subsidy, and when you're on welfare, you're less likely to go to work. And I think that's kind of what happened here with Trump, is that he became so comfortable, and he still surrounds himself with a very small group of people who agree with him. And I think that if somebody was there and somebody had, kicked him in the pants and said, you got to look at this stuff, and that it would have been a different thing. So I think what happened was Cruz was able to kind of take advantage of Trump's complacency and stole his lunch.
Well, now he sees you have to kind of farm it out and broaden the tent because he's been trying to do everything, himself with the small group. And now, like you said, Dana, you've got to run all these different, disparate campaigns at once. So you've got to get some troops.
And he also has, I think he does run a risk of a narrative, a pattern that's becoming a narrative. So remember, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago when Donald Trump went to Washington, D.C., and he had a meeting with lots of influential people, like sort of K Street type people, and then he went over to the RNC and had a meeting. Well, reportedly in that meeting, Donald Trump got frustrated with his staff and said, you guys need to get on the stick and make sure that we're doing this delegate process correctly. Nobody confirmed that out of the RNC, and I don't even think the Trump campaign commented on it. But then, so they go to Colorado, and this happens, and then the blame game starts. And so instead of just being the leader that says, okay, we need to do better, I'm going to do better, we're going to do better in all of these states, and here's how I'm going to do it, the narrative is he blames people, and that is not necessarily what people are looking for.
So let me undercut the whole narrative.
Okay, then we got to go.
Which is that Trump has 45% of the delegates, but he has only 37% of the votes of the Republican Party. Oh, my goodness. You mean this rigged system is actually benefiting Donald Trump? Amazing. In fact, Ted Cruz is winning right now because he's getting people like Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, who don't even like him. So they're going through the same thing you're going through. They don't like Ted Cruz, but suddenly, yeah, we'll line up with... And Ted Cruz is saying that Donald Trump's people are threatening Republican state people right now, and he says that he thinks he's Michael Corleone and he's a gangster. He says there's violence everywhere Trump goes. Trump is opening himself to that line of attack from Cruz doesn't help Donald Trump.
First of all, you do know that Ted Cruz also has more delegates than he has share of the vote.
Yeah, but who has the lead?
As well. But also, you know why that happens. It's because of the winner-take-all status. So if you just beat someone by a vote, you can take a lot of the delegates.
Yeah, correct.
But that wasn't Trump's idea. I mean,
I'm just saying, those are the rules.
That was
so if you're going to say, Eric, if you're going to say, I don't like the rules, these rules are bad, hey, then how come you're winning by so much? You are getting even more
on the state level.
from the current set of rules.
I think he's trying to say that the state rules are rigged against him. They're not. They may be or they may not be. But that's not the fight, though.
What's
the fight? The rigging at the RNC. That's the fight that everyone should have.
You mean at the convention?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because they're not rigged now in the states, and I don't think that there's any rigging.
You have a Rules Committee member today on TV saying at 1,100 delegates, Donald Trump will be the nominee.
By the way, I would agree with that.
What?
You know why? Because everybody thinks if he gets close, he can't be denied one because there would be a revolt. But secondly, guess what?
I'll go on record.
He's going to put you on
record and say that if he has 1,101 delegates, they're going to still fight. They're going to still fight and figure out a way to get him.
But you know what? He can win enough people through persuasion. What was it, the famous one that Ronald Reagan did? He said, come on, I'm going to get John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart to come with me. We'll talk to you about
this. Right. But we didn't have time for this, but Charles Krauthammer said the person that's ultimately benefiting from all of this is,
of course,
Greg.
I was just saying, I have an idea for opening a gym in D.C. and calling it House of Reps.
Okay, that's awesome. Drink your muscle milk.